What's up, YouTube? Thorburn here, back with another Hip Shots video. I hope you guys all got a chance to check out the Revved Up video that I just put out on the Obamagate situation and the case regarding Michael Flynn. I'm still kind of recovering from getting that episode out, and in a 48-hour period, I worked for probably 40 hours to get that whole thing researched, sourced, written, shot, edited. I mean, I do everything by myself, so it was, like I said, about 40 hours in a 48-hour window to get that out to you guys. So I hope you guys have all checked that out and do share that information or do share that video because that information needs to get out. But we really can't trust our media to actually report on it honestly. They're all calling it a conspiracy theory. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's just a flat out conspiracy. So we need to look into that. We're going to be talking today about this article here from Gizmodo. Here's who just voted to let the FBI seize your online search history without a warrant. I mean, again, this feels like Bush League stuff, and when I say Bush League, I mean Bush era. This feels like it goes straight back to the days of the Patriot Act, which is, of course, when they created the FISA courts, which we've already seen through the case of Michael Flynn, are ripe for abuse. So seeing in the wake of all that they are now voting on a new process and an amendment to preserve Americans' rights to privacy was struck down is very alarming. I think we need to start voting these motherfuckers out of office. Sorry for the language. I'm not in on this. I'm a registered Republican, but you will never hear me defend the George Bush era style of Republican politics. I don't think it was ever good. I just don't like neocons to begin with. The whole neocon movement to me is anything neocon, neoliberal. To me, they're both inbred cousins rolling around under the same cover of, intelligence agency veil, or whatever you want to call it, under the veil of the intelligence agencies where they can just trample on our rights. But anyways, let's take a look at this. Let's take a look at this article here, and we'll go ahead and read it. A bipartisan amendment that would have prohibited law enforcement agencies such as the FBI from obtaining the web browsing and internet search histories of Americans without a federal warrant failed to pass in the U.S. Senate today, or on Wednesday, by a single vote. So, at least we got almost half of the people out there were looking for us. But remember, we want to have 100% representation on people looking out for our interests. So right now, batting 49%, not good. 27 Republicans and 10 Democrats voted against the amendment, H.R. 6172, which will authorize lapsed surveillance powers under the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. That's FISA, the whole court system where they basically screwed Trump's campaign over and used the FISA courts as a means to gain access to Trump's campaign. So as Republicans, or as Trump supporters at the very least, we should be weary of anything that gives power to the FISA courts, because we've already seen them abused really to the most detrimental effect we could possibly imagine. The amendment offered up by Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, and Senator Steve Daines, Republican of Montana, would have forced the government to get a warrant before obtaining the internet search history of Americans. Now, I'm a little. There's one question here that the article doesn't really answer that does raise questions, though. Now, is this just your browser search history, like what you search on Google, or is this going to look at everything that you look up on social media? Say, maybe you follow a bunch of Republican groups, or you follow a bunch of Democrat groups. You follow certain political movements on different social networks. Are they going to be able to then use this to look at what kind of, basically to paint a political profile of you based on what you search on social media? Because that's where we get a lot of our politics from, more so than we do our browser history and things like that. So that's going to be an interesting thing. There's nothing that really answers that question coming up in this article. But I do think it's a question we need to ask and be cognizant of. So let's see. Under Section 215 of the Act, the government can compel phone companies and internet service providers to turn over such data if it is deemed vaguely relevant to terrorism and espionage cases. And I mean, vaguely relevant. I mean, that's you could tie anything to terrorism interests. I mean, if you saw, we recently indicted Nicolas Maduro on narco-terrorism charges. Now, while I certainly think that Maduro is a worthy person of being taken down, and I do think there is such thing as narco-terrorism, Does that mean if they catch a text message of you trying to get a dime bag from somebody, are you all of a sudden wrapped up in a potential narco-terrorism investigation? That's where you start getting into pretty shaky ground. So let's go on here. In a speech on the Senate floor ahead of the vote, Senator Wyden questioned whether law-abiding Americans should have to worry about their government looking over their shoulders at all times of the day. The typical American may think to themselves, I've got nothing to worry about, I've done nothing wrong. The government has no reason to suspect me of anything. Why should I worry? Wyden said. Unfortunately, the question is not whether you did anything wrong. The question is whether a government agent believes believes they have the right to look at your web searches. And siding with a Democrat here, I agree with that. The warrantless collection of Americans' web browsing history, added Wyden, offers endless opportunities for abuse. Wyden and Daines had mostly overlapping reasons for wanting to change the law, but even where their motivations diverge, both's interest is inevitably served. For each, for example, holds up President Trump as a primary reason for why their amendment is sorely needed. Each lawmaker's impetus is opposite, but would still ring true if one stood in the other's shoes. And I think this is where it's just going to be hilarious, the Democrat versus Republican. So let's see. Wyden, for instance, pointed to Trump's frequent calls for investigations into his political enemies and noted that Attorney General William Barr had injected himself into investigations that personally affected Trump's political interests. Now, this is where we just get silly. I mean, this is just flat out silly. Trump's calling for investigations into his political enemies? No, he's calling into investigations of investigations that his political enemies did into him and abused these same FISA laws in order to carry them out. The framing of this stuff from Democrats, you have a Democrat that starts making a good point that I can get on board with about wanting to protect Americans, and then they just have to go off the rails and go into fucking la-la land where they make absolutely no sense and just are completely devoid of reality for what's actually happening in the context that they're trying to frame it within. It's absurd. A likely nod to the Justice Department's recent bid to exonerate Michael Flynn, who pleaded guilty in December 2017 to lying to the FBI about his conversation with Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak. A U.S. district judge put a hold on that effort Tuesday, saying he expects third parties will seek to intervene in the case. Now, this Judge Sullivan, this is a conversation for another day. I don't want to get into it. This guy's got to go. I mean, he is a swamp rat with 8 legs at this point. I mean, he's a mutated swamp rat. So anyways, let's continue. Handing the agents of a future Democratic president, let me see, hold on. So I'm feeling dyslexic today. I'm still a little shot out from all the work I've done over the past few days. But let's see. Handing the agents of a future Democratic president broad new surveillance powers, particularly given the moment's deep partisan mistrust, obviously does not serve the Republican Party's interests. Who would disagree? It was Daines' contention, meanwhile, that partisan agents could weaponize this authority in some future attack on a White House hopeful, party yet unchosen. We saw what a handful of scornful government bureaucrats did to President Trump when they abused FISA to serve their political motives, Daines said. Our own government spied on an American citizen, a political advisor to then-candidate Trump with no oversight. And what happened to President Trump can happen to anybody, for any purpose, and that is a very serious problem. And it is a very serious problem. That's the fact that they can actually go and look into a presidential candidate and utilize his advisors and his aides and abuse the courts in order to get access for that. If they can do that to people that are high-ranking, prominent figures, they will just run roughshod over you if you give them any reason to. So we gotta really rein our government in on this. So let's see, where were we? In December, an Inspector General report outlined that what the New York Times' Charlie Savage called a staggering, dysfunctional, and error-ridden process in reference to the FBI's procurement of a Pfizer wiretap warrant for Carter Page, a Trump campaign advisor. And we talked about that in the Revved Up video that I did the other day. So again, go ahead and watch that. The litany of problems with the FBI's surveillance applications, Hina Shamsi, director of the ACLU's National Security Project, said at the time, demonstrates how the secrecy shrouding the government's one-sided FISA process breeds abuse. And that is true with any government agency or any government process that operates in the shadows. If you're operating in the shadows in order to serve the public, you're probably not doing a great job of serving the public. Now, I understand there needs to be certain classification measures to keep information from getting out of the hands of our international opponents, but we need to figure out a system of checks and balances that allows us to be more vigilant about making sure that those are not abused and that umbrella is not widened to serve to abuse Americans and our rights, because that's the most important thing about being an American, is having our rights. So let's see. For too long, the Patriot Act and the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, commonly referred to as FISA, have been used to trample civil liberties of American citizens, Dane said on the floor in a floor speech Tuesday morning. And that's true. That is absolutely true. In a statement to Gizmodo after the vote, Dane said he would continue pressing for reforms to FISA, saying it is critical to the privacy of all Americans. True. I will get on board with that. The final vote on Wyden Dane's amendment was 59 to 37. 60 ayes were required to pass. Oh, wow. So when I gave them credit for a 49% positive, we only had 37 vote for, that's not, I'm sorry, I got that backwards. I got that totally backwards. We had 59 that wanted the amendment. So we had 59 that wanted the amendment. So we're actually batting better. So that means, that's at least an encouraging sign that we're on the winning side. But of course, due to the process of needing 60 ayes for it to pass, missing by one is incredibly discouraging. Below is a list of senators by party who voted against the reform and those who didn't vote at all. Now, I'm sad to say that Republicans make up the longer portion of the list of people who did not vote for this. And we all know that Republicans are, going back to the neocon era of George Bush politics, that Republicans were the ones that didn't really care too much about your privacy rights and were totally willing to trade out American liberties for American security. And whether they've actually made America that much more concerned, that's kind of an amorphous, very difficult, nebulous thing to hone in on, whether they're actually successful at doing that. It's very easy to say, we're doing this for your safety, but to actually see the results, the only results you have is that we either haven't gotten attacked or we have gotten attacked, and the rest of it hides underneath a shroud of secrecy. So it's difficult to actually even tell how effective their measures in trading our liberties for security, which I disagree with on a fundamental level, but how effective they even are. So the Republicans that voted against it were and some of these people, I don't know all of our senators and everything, so let's just go through and see who all of them were. John Barrasso, Marsha Blackburn, Roy Blunt, John Boozman, Richard Burr, which I'm surprised Richard Burr is even still around. He was the one that pulled all of his money out with the COVID, pulled all of his money out before the economy crashed with COVID. Although it didn't really crash, Trump's done a good job of keeping it alive. So I'm interested to see how all that plays out as states like mine in California continue to keep us locked down and shutter private businesses, while of course keeping Walmart and the big corporations open. Okay, so other ones: Shelley Moore Capito, Susan Collins, who's always been a squish Republican, John Cornyn, who I think is kind of a mixed bag of response of, whether he's typically on the right side or the wrong side. Tom Cotton. Now that surprises me because usually I'm pretty warm on Tom Cotton. This is not something that I can agree with him with. He has been good on a number of other things. Deb Fisher. Oh, look at that, Lindsey Grahamnesty. We never really, he's almost like a two-headed monster where you never know whether you're getting Lindsey Grambo, who was revitalized under Trump, or Lindsey Grahamnesty, who is that soft, squishy Republican who just wanted to let all the illegals in, during the, I guess, Bush and Obama administrations. I just don't trust Lindsey Graham. He doesn't have a track record that I can really latch onto and say he's done this well and he's been on the right side with this. Too many things where he's been on the wrong side on, and then he just recently, under Trump, started getting a few things right. I just don't know that he might be a paper tiger or might be have a paper spine, in terms of what he's really about right now. I can never really tell with him. Cindy Hyde-Smith, James Einhoff, Ron Johnson, James Lankford, Mitch McConnell. I always hated Mitch McConnell for the longest time. Old foghorn, leghorn, turtle-looking guy. He has done something. One thing I have to give Mitch McConnell credit for getting all of the judges through for Trump, and I think that's going to be a huge, huge, huge payoff that we're going to see once we start seeing a lot of these. I think a lot of people are going to be getting arrested in the whole deep state purge, draining of the swamp, and I think all of the judges that we put into place are going to play a major role in swiftly getting them through the court systems and getting a lot of this cleared up. So Mitch McConnell did do an excellent job getting, just pushing through a bunch of Trump judges. But again, he's a swamp monster himself in a way. He's kind of like that swamp monster that'll still kind of help guide you through the swamp a little bit. I don't know. I'm going off on a tangent here, but anyways, David Perdue from my home state of Georgia, Rob Portman, who I thought was supposed to be pretty good, but I don't actually know a whole lot about him. Pat Roberts, Mitt Romney, who is basically a Democrat. He's almost listed on the wrong part of the list here. He's his R translates to a D. Really. Marco Rubio, Marco Rubio has just flat out bored me ever since I've known who he is. He just seems like a dial tone to me. I don't know. Richard Shelby, John Thune, Thune, Tom Tillis, Patrick Toomey, Roger Wicker, and Todd Young. And then, of course, in the Democrats, we have Thomas Carper, Robert Casey, Dianne Feinstein. Surprise, surprise. Dianne Feinstein is one of the most corrupt people in the Senate. I think she's basically sold us out to China over the last 30 years, so we need to do something about her. Margaret Wood Hassan, Doug Jones, Tim Kaine, Joe Manchin. A little surprising on Joe Manchin there. Joe Manchin is kind of the one who might reach across the aisle to the Republican side every once in a while. I don't know a whole lot about him. I just know that he's one of the more conservative blue dog type Democrats. Then we got Gene Shaheen. That's a funny name. Mark Warner and Sheldon Whitehouse. 4 members who did not vote were Bernie Sanders. Now, that's a surprise for all you Bernie bros out there. I would have thought Bernie would have been, fighting for the people, the big populace that he has, trying to protect us, but apparently he just didn't want anything to do with it. But again, we also know that Bernie Sanders is, we talk about Lindsey Graham having a paper spine. Senator Sanders is an earthworm. He has no spine whatsoever. We've seen the way that he cowered and caved to the Democratic establishment. That's just hilarious how spineless that man is. We see people rush the stage and just take the microphone from him. He just, okay, I'll just wait for, I was giving a speech here, but, you go ahead and just take the mic from me and make it your event. Whoever actually thought he could run a country? He would get eaten alive on the international stage. Ben Sass, Senator Lamar Alexander, Senator Patty Murray. Senator Alexander is currently in self-quarantine due to a member on his staff testing positive for COVID, blah, blah, blah. Nobody really cares about COVID. We all know this whole thing is a bunch of nonsense. It's basically just the flu. So let's go to we got an update here. A separate amendment posed by Senators Mike Lee, who is usually pretty awesome, and Patrick Leahy was passed by the Senate. It includes various provisions designed to protect Americans and civil liberties, among other reforms to the role of Americus Curiae. The amendment requires the FISA court to appoint one or more individuals with privacy and civil liberties expertise in cases that raise significant concerns with respect to First Amendment protected activities. Now, I always get weary whenever they have these kind of like third-party oversights. That just seems like something where if you're getting a third-party member in, you just find somebody with expertise that kind of has the leanings that you have and get them in there just to confirm whatever it is. There's a whole lot of confirmation bias in that process, so I don't trust this. I don't trust that bringing in somebody with civil liberties expertise. And expertise, what does expertise mean? Having expertise doesn't mean that your positions and the way that you process your expertise and put it into practice is actually going to be beneficial or good. So let's see. It further enshrines specific requirements for the mandatory disclosure of exculpatory material. Well, that's good. Saying the government must bring forth any information that might reasonably call into question the accuracy of a surveillance application or any information that could otherwise raise doubts with respect to the findings required under the application process. At the end of the day, like this stuff feels like it's. I mean, it's dropping you from an airplane but giving you a pillow to land on. You know, I mean, it might cushion you a little bit, but it is all still exploitable. There's no roadblocks in there. No hard stops for the government in terms of having to get a warrant. You know, if you have to get a warrant, you actually have to go through the process. And you have to present it to a judge, and then they have to sign off on it, saying that the evidence that you bring them is reasonable and requires a warrant. And I know you can make the case that there's a lot of backroom deals, and prosecutors and judges all know each other, and you can get that whole rubber stamp type thing. At the end of the day, protecting our liberties is a full-time job, and we need to make sure that it's done because it is the most important job that we as Americans can possibly take on and shoulder, and we cannot get lazy about it. So let's see. Senator Vitka, a senior policy counsel at Demand Progress, called the amendment's passage a victory. Amendment's passage of victory for American civil liberties, despite the Wind and Daines Amendment being shot down earlier this afternoon. It's a half win. I mean, it's a soft win. It's like I said, it makes it a little bit easier. But at the end of the day, excuse me, I just can't trust a third party to come in and rule in my favor and rule in the favor of civil liberties. I just don't trust that's going to happen because again, whoever they bring in, we're never going to know who it is. We're never really going to have that information. It's all under this veil of the FISA court. So I'm not happy with it. The Lee Leahy Amendment ensures an independent voice has access to and can raise issues with FISA surveillance targeting religious groups, political groups, and the media. The underlying bill remains broken, but adoption of the Lee Leahy Amendment presents a privacy victory well beyond what many believe to be possible. Maybe there's more that I'm just not reading into this, something that I'm missing. It seems like they're over-touting the victory of this Lee Leahy Amendment. I mean, like I said, I'd rather have that than nothing, but at the end of the day, I won't warrant roadblocks for these people because our civil liberties are more important than our safety. They just are. Possible said Vitka, adding that it marks a long-awaited turn for privacy in Congress and the start of many more fights to restore it. So, yeah, I think that's about it. I think we need to look into this, and I think we all need to make mental notes. You know, if you're from one of these states where your rep voted against this amendment, you know, I think we should all keep lists of things that our representatives do that we either like and don't like. We need to be paying more attention to this. And I think everybody should keep a list of what their personal representative does. Don't worry about a representative from another state. You're not going to be voting for them. But keep lists of the good and bad things that your representatives do. And none of them are going to bat 100 or 1,000. As a baseball fan, I should never have said 100 there. They're never going to bat 1,000. But we do need to hold these people accountable, and we do have short memories in a 24-hour news cycle. So I do think it's important that we start actually tracking the good and bad things that our representatives do. And if you are from one of the states where these representatives are from, I think you should go ahead and mark this down as a negative, a mark against them in your little My Representatives journal. We'll call it that. But anyways, that's about it for today. I just want to say I do have another revved up video that I'm working on right now. We're going to be talking about tech censorship, and we're also going to be talking about certain AI platforms that are going to be integrated into our social media platforms that are essentially going to be used to censor conservatives and any pro-Trump voices coming into the election. We are in an informational war, and it is going to be up to us to make sure that we win that war. And I'm talking atomic bombs of memes and messaging and, you know, the reason Trump wins is because he has the digital army. He has us out there fighting the good fight, putting our reputations on the line, putting our standings at work on the line. I work in both film and academia, and I'm out here doing my revved up videos like I don't give a fuck. You don't like it? Well, that's my take. You know, I get a little, I'm not a bootlicker. I never will be. I don't respect bootlickers. So don't be a bootlicker, and I hope to see you guys. I'll probably have another one of these videos, but coming tomorrow. another hip shot, but stay tuned for the next revved up video. If you haven't already yet, go watch the one that I posted yesterday. Like I said, I worked my ass off on it. It is completely documented, completely sourced, and it is a comprehensive guide to the Obamagate scandal. I forgot to do my shameless plug, so please go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe, share this video. Voices like mine, we're the first to get taken out back and old yellered by the folks at Big Tech. I already had a scare today. I thought they might have been deleting my channel because of the Obamagate video that I made. I do think it is a very comprehensive, very informative, and I stage it in a way that you can understand the timeline, so that all the bits and pieces of information. It's easy to have all those bits and pieces, but not actually know what it adds up to. So I tried to clear that up in my video so that people know exactly what happened and on what timeline. But anyways, rev your engines, ride hard, and fight like hell.